Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's in a house with sick people. Everyone's vaccinated, no COVID, but my daughter, wife, son all have a cold, so I'm not going to be too loud during this video while I review the album Black Metal 2 by Dean Blunt. Now, here's the thing, when this album came out a couple weeks ago, I got a couple people requesting it. And whenever anybody requests me to review anything, it is an honor. I don't mean that like lightly. It is an honor that people care what I think about something. So I listened to it, I skipped around, listened to a couple seconds of each track, and then I was like, okay, I liked it. And then I listened to it all the way through, and I just didn't quite have anything to say about it. Like, I liked it, but that was sort of it. And then yesterday, I'm trying to figure out what am I going to review this week. There isn't anything that sort of jumps out at me as the thing I need to review. So I put out a general call in the community tab of this page. And overwhelmingly, the number one request was Dean Blunt Black Metal 2. So here's what any good teacher knows. You really need to know when to listen to your students, when you should listen to people who are paying attention. And if you know this channel enough to be on my community tab or to leave a comment, then you know me enough to know I should definitely have something to say about this album. So I gave it another chance yesterday, and it turns out I like it quite a bit. Musically, the thing that I needed to do, and maybe you need to do this as well, is don't listen to it on your computer through teeny tiny speakers. Put in headphones and get the depth of this music. Musically, it is very much a sort of bedroom sounding album. It sounds like it's made in a fairly intimate context, and that's the way that it is best heard. I think part of my confusion is the title of the album, Black Metal 2. Hey England, stop naming stuff after music genres when you're not that genre. Okay, Black MIDI is a genre. It's also a band. Black metal is a genre. It is also the name of an album. I don't know. It makes things quite confusing, but I think this is on purpose. Of course, it's Black Metal 2, and I haven't even listened to Black Metal 1. This is my first time listening to Dean Blunt. Later in the week, I'm going to be reviewing The Life of Pierre Bourne 5. I've missed 4 installments of that, but that's part of the charm of this channel, I hope, is that I'm not an expert. I'm just somebody who listens with an open mind to all sorts of new music. So the thing I was wondering is, what is it that people want me to say? Like what are they hearing in this that makes them think I would bring something interesting to it, other than the fact that it's quality and it's hip-hop adjacent, right? I mean, there's not many lyrics in the entire album. For an album which appears in many ways to be a rap album, there's very few words. For an album with lots of music, there's not a lot of development to each of the songs. Ultimately, what I realized is that I was looking at it all wrong. I don't think you're supposed to approach this like some kind of music album. You're supposed to treat it like a piece of art. And when I did that, everything unfurled for me and I understood. Yes, it is good to listen to. There are some good beats, there are some good rhymes, but it's more of an experience. It is more of a trip to a gallery than to a concert. Oddly enough, that made me think that the musician he reminds me most of is Lou Reed, like late Lou Reed, where his albums sort of in the last kind of 20 years of his life weren't so much about the music as much as they were about the idea of what the music is. So if we're to treat this as a piece of art, who could we compare it to? Now, Dean Blunt is British. So there's a whole host of great British artists, but I'm not going to compare them to any of them. Instead, I think we need to think about pop art. Because what interests me most about this is the way that he takes the tropes and the words and the vocabulary and the attitude of hip-hop and decontextualizes it in a different way, making something perhaps a little bit more highbrow than we usually associate with hip-hop. And in that way, the person he reminds me most of is American artist Roy Lichtenstein. Or is it Lichtenstein? I actually don't know how you pronounce his name. I am an art historian as well. That was one of my majors in high school. But I don't know how you pronounce his last name. Put it in the comments. Is it Lichtenstein or Lichtenstein? I don't know. If you don't know about him, you've seen imitations of his work and you have seen his work. Work like this, okay? Where he would make paintings that were supposed to look like comic books. This is in 1964. This is before the idea that comic book could be art was shared by most people, and this was his contribution to art. Now, what was complicated and what remains complicated about Lichtenstein, I think it's Lichtenstein, about Lichtenstein is the fact that what he was doing was making high art out of low art. And implied in that is a kind of moral judgment, an incorrect moral judgment about the value of comic book art itself. As an example, this work here, Oh, All Right, was made in 1964, and it's based on this work right here from 1963, okay? From Secret Hearts, sort of a comic book about relationships, and you see her saying, Oh, all right. I'm not going to comment on how great Lichtenstein is. He's great. But I will say that I find this dilemma interesting, and it's the way that I felt listening to black metal too. He uses hip-hop words and tropes, and at times hip-hop sounding beats, but he's very clearly not a hip-hop artist. Perhaps he's using the aggression, the disillusionment that is implied or is heard in a lot of rap artists' words to echo his own, but I'm not quite sure. Even the album cover itself it's all black with just the number 2. This is pretty clearly a play on the Dr. Dre 2001 album cover because the 2 shares the same font, okay? It's just very clearly a reference to that, all right? So here he is, he's kind of commenting on hip-hop while making it and sort of making this abstract recontextualization of hip-hop. It seems to me that this is happening quite a bit in England. Now, I've been doing a whole series of videos about the sort of post-punk scene that everybody wants to call post-Brexit, but I'm not going to, because I'm trying to put it in a larger global context of post-punk. But still, there is this whole British scene that's happening, right? And it's happening with sort of prog rock and stuff like that. There is this other thing that's happening that I think is a sort of weird reaction to hip-hop. And that does what Dean Blunt does. You know, I'm thinking like the Sleaford Mods, I'm thinking of Ghost Poet, I'm thinking of King Cruel or King K. Rool, I don't know how you pronounce that either, where like different elements of hip-hop are used to make art that definitely isn't just straight hip-hop. It's commenting on the form while also being the form at the same time. I don't know why this appears to be particular to England. I'm sure it happens in America as well. If you can think of examples, I am unironically asking you to tell me those as well. I wonder if it isn't because they're British, you know? Maybe there's something alienating about hip-hop music being such a powerful voice of the underrepresented in America. Maybe it doesn't feel like they are comfortable just taking on the mantle of hip-hop, or maybe it's just a testament to how hip-hop has taken over the world. Either way, this album fits well within both of those fields, as a work of pop art and as a work of this faux hop, British faux hop, I don't know how to call it. Each song on the album is quite minimal. Most of them are led by guitars. To that end, the guitar work reminds me a lot of King Cruel and VC Pines, more Brits, just lots of sort of flange and chorus effects. Not like virtuoso, but also not ridiculously minimalist, kind of in between those. Most songs on the album don't quite develop into anything. Most of them feel like a single idea, a single musical idea, with some sad, vaguely hostile words, with a very heavy British accent, and then quite often, and quite delightfully, Joanne, what's her name? Joanne Robinson comes in and sings along and kind of offers a nice counterpoint. In this way, it reminds me a fair amount of the previous Ghost Poet album because he started to integrate more female vocalists as well, which I think helps, especially if you're sort of spending the entire album kind of a low British, having a nice higher voice, just creates a natural counterpoint. It's nice. So, what am I going to do with this album? You know, what am I going to do? Not much music, not much lyrics. I've already explained the general concept of it, but I'm not done. I'm going to go further and explain how it's good and how it's interesting. I think what I want to do is I want to focus on my homework. So if you don't know, for every video, I assign one song to listen to. And before I do that, I ask you to smash the like bucket. That's what my daughter calls it. So smash the like bucket and do subscribe. I've had a rough week. I spent like way too much time making this Daft Punk video that nobody watched. So if you give me a like, and watch that video too. It was good. I don't know why people don't like it. Anyways, so I give you this homework where I tell you a good song that is a good example. It's not always my favorite song, but it's always a good way to understand the themes and the sound of the album. In this case, I'm going with Mugu, M-U-G-U. Now this title itself feels to me like it came right off of a Takeshi 6ix9ine album. It turns out it's a term for someone who's been scammed. But what we hear is just very nice low bass, a kind of a unsettling bass drum. Like if you listen to the bass drum sound, it has a sort of like pop to it. I don't know. Great guitar work all the way through. I don't know if he plays guitar, someone else plays guitar. I can't find the credits for this album. Another thing which you can tell me in the comments. But it's very delicate and interesting, the guitar work. So you have this comparison between this nice guitar work and this fairly minimalist kind of brutal drums. And then we have the lyrics, which I'm going to read to you in their entirety because there's not that many of them. Philadelphia Half-Life. An obvious reference to Philadelphia Half-Life, the great Roots album, which I looked in my collection and it turns out I don't own that one. I have like all their other albums, but I'm missing that one. Weird. Philadelphia Half-Life, I don't care who I like. If you want it, then here it is. I'm gonna say it and you know I will again. And here come a friend, didn't see you coming in, with a couple G's that I resent. So already this usage of the term G's in an album which is fairly high-minded, we're using some street slang here. Something light got my city tight. Okay, again, the way that he's talking, the kind of like braggadocious manner of talking about got his city tight, right? Doesn't actually appear to be the kind of person he sees himself to be. And these crackers stay hype. Crackers, I assume, referring to a derogatory word for white people. Everybody got a sin, so a scammer's gotta have a win. And all my N-words getting right. There's something about the way that he uses the N-word, even though he's saying it in the context of rap, and even though he is himself black, that is very unsettling. I don't know what it is. I think it's the weird, it's the context that it's in. It doesn't sound like that's the next word that you're going to hear. And I think this is one of the keys to understanding this album, is the way that he uses this word. It doesn't feel, and I don't know anything about the man, but it doesn't feel like it's a part of his actual vocabulary. It's more this character that he's playing and this art concept that he has, right? Like you know, no more than Roy Lichtenstein like actually reads those comic books. It's more like he's making a comment on these comic books. So let it out, N-word, show them crackers, what you all about. So the whole time, the way that he delivers these lines, so let it out, like quite often it feels as though he's taking entire quotes from other rap songs and just putting them in here. And he probably is. I mean, you know, things like let it out, set it off, I mean, these are things that we've heard all the time in hip hop. But he's able to do it and create, as you heard, if you clicked on the link and smash the like bucket, if you heard that, you know, you understand like this weird relationship he seems to have with this music, with this odd sound bed. And that atmosphere, if you enjoy that atmosphere of that song, you are gonna love this album. The whole album stays right there in that atmosphere. The first track is called Vigil. The nice strings keep playing, they grow over the song. He does this a couple times on the album where it's not so much there's different parts, it's just the mix is weird, so the strings just keep turning up. What's nice is he has some like staccato strings doing joop, 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 and then legato strings on top, and then the weird hip hop sub bass. So that's really cool. I'm sorry, I'm just saying that. I'm just saying all those words together. And I'm realizing as I'm saying it how cool it is. I think that was the reaction I had when I listened to it on headphones as opposed to just on my computer, you know? That's a lot of interesting musical things, and the overall effect is still one of fairly stultifying minimalism. N-word, where's your gun? Can't you see what you've done? Vague, menacing, sad. then Mugu, which I've already described, Dash, Snow. Cool kind of funky drumming in here, very good bass work. Guitars are that chorus effect that I'm talking about that reminds me of the King K. Rool and Vic Pines and all that. I mean, VC Pines. Very minimalist style. It's nice having Joanna Robinson again, or Joanne Robinson back. She's always good at sort of smoothing out the sound. Then Sketamine has this sort of in the front, in the back. I think it's kind of a Wu-Tang reference. Kind of guitar, and these bells doing some percussion. An interesting line here, everybody asks you where are you from. I can't tell, is this personal? Also, is this whole album actually personal? Am I misreading it? I am afraid of that. I am fully open to the fact that I may be misreading this album greatly by not seeing it as being very personal. Repeating over and over again, where are you from? This is a very specific experience to people who live in countries in which immigration is a frequent topic of debate, and in particular in Europe and France and England and pretty much anywhere. If you don't have white skin, people feel entitled to ask you, where are you from? The answer is usually, I'm from London, whatever. The concept of nationality is different in America than it is in the rest of the world. But still, I wonder, is this a little hint of a personal side to this album? Or is it just kind of tying into the hip-hop trope of what part of the city you're from and what gang are you in, and it's just like a gang thing. Again, another song where it just gets louder and louder and louder as it goes. Semtex, great bass and percussion. The drums have kind of a Phil Spector, doom, 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 yeah, weird kind of ominous strings in the back. There's a lot of delicate detail in the production on here, which really you have to listen carefully to hear. Again, this doesn't really develop. It's just an idea, but it's nice because the voice is nice high up front, whereas in some of the other songs, it's not quite as prevalent. Next track is called La Gaza, very super cool kind of junky drum beat. It's all about keeping it real. And the guitar's sort of doing almost like a Satisfaction riff. Again, are these lyrics real, or is he just taking them and then just from other songs and putting them together? If you can't keep it real, let Jesus take the wheel. And then the sounds of cars skirting all over the place. Art. What part is sincere, what part is ironic? Nil by Mouth, I think, might be the real. It could be that at the end here, the album gets a lot more personal. Daddy's Broke, What a Joke. I'm not quite sure. It could be an actual song about the pain of living in poverty. I don't know. Here the guitar is so loud in the mix, kind of a droney sound to it, nice relaxed drumming, and there's a lot more for Joanne Robinson to do, which is nice. As the album ends, it seems to get more personal, and then she seems to be more upfront. Zaza, kind of a half-spoken, half-sung song about girl, you're not gonna leave him. And this has an actual second part. It tunes out, there's a break, and then there's a ridiculously avant-garde, warbled guitar part, which is nice to hear. Woosa is just an instrumental song, my least favorite on the album, probably for that reason. It's nice the way it develops, these horn sounds, and then acoustic guitar, and then strings, and then the strings do ring, which is kind of nice, and then bass comes in, but I just kept waiting for something more to happen. Finally, we have The Rot, the most developed song on the album. Strings and guitar, some good drums. The lyrics seem a lot more personal here. It's the catchiest song. It's the song with the best interaction between Joanne Robinson and Dean Blunt. Just kind of a sweet and nice, interesting song. Even with some of that avant-garde sensibility, it ends with this harp and these weird flutes, and you sort of wish you could hear more. I'm curious if this could have been the basis of the whole album, and they could have built it from here, something a little bit more developed. But it's not my job to go to an art gallery and tell the artist what they should have done better. I don't think good critics do that. I think good critics just show up and say, well, this is what I saw. So as somebody who listened to the album, I would have liked more like The Rot. But as somebody who just experienced this album, I'm not sure it's necessary. Because I had this experience where I was just listening, and I was in this soundscape, and I was in this zone, and I felt like I was both appreciating hip-hop while also seeing it in a different context, in a way that makes me sort of revisit some of the themes and the emotions that the art form brings out. Is that why you wanted me to do it? I hope. I had a lot of fun doing that. Also, it's Patreon day for my weekend videos. I show my Patreons. Hey, do you recognize the font from a band popular with middle-aged men? Let me know if you do. So, you know, these are my LPs. They give more money than the EPs, but I appreciate all the money that comes from everybody. I take the money that you give me and I buy albums with it. I only spend money on music. This great guy is a double LP. He spent the most money. But it's more than money. It's the concept of supporting, you know what I mean? It's more than like money. It's like, wow, you believe enough in what I'm doing here to like give that kind of tangible support. All right, well, I have to make some tea. Hey, Goat, what kind of tea do you want? Peppermint. Okay, she's gonna have peppermint tea. I think I'm gonna make hibiscus tea for my wife upstairs. And maybe, I was thinking we could watch Ragnarok.
Yeah, oh, I actually really want to see that, yeah.
Yeah, I watch Ragnarok and, I don't know, we'll see. All right, until next time, there's the camera.